Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the book recommendations tag. My name is Suhail and I make videos about books here on YouTube. If you guys are into those type of videos, make sure you hit that subscribe button before you leave. And yeah, let's get right into it. The first one is recommend a book from one of your favorite genres. One of my favorite genres is thrillers, and I feel like this is definitely one of my favorite thrillers. I've only touched on it maybe like once in my channel, so I would like to talk about it again because I feel like every other book I have either made a vlog about it or talked about it multiple times. This one I feel like I have not talked a lot, so this is the one I'm going to be recommending. This is The Push by Ashley Audrain. In this book we follow Blythe, and she gets married, and she's never been a family person because she's never had a family, and her husband is a family person. He wants a lot of kids, but they weren't very vocal about it until after they got married, and now she's like, wait, I'm supposed to be a mom now, you know what I mean? So she decides like, yeah, whatever, I'll have a kid, and she ended up having Violet, and she didn't have that mother-daughter connection with Violet. Something was always missing, and I feel like Violet was acting a little bit weird as she was growing up. Then they have another kid called Sam, and this is a baby, a boy, and with this kid, Blythe does have a connection, and she clicks with the baby right away, and she feels like Violet acts a little bit weird still. But then one day Violet does something that changes their whole life completely. Literally, like everything changes. Everything changes. It's kind of like one of these stories where like the main character, so like Blythe, is telling everyone, this is what happened, this is what I saw Violet do, and nobody believes her, you know what I mean? Everybody thinks Blythe is crazy and is making up things in her head. So this is one of those books where everyone, like the reader, is questioning the author's like sanity, and like you never know what's real and what's not, but like at the same time you kind of do. I don't know, it's really nice. I loved it. I cannot recommend it enough. I feel like, I don't know if this is hyped online, but if it's not, oh, I forgot to turn on my lamp. Anyways, I highly recommend this book. I cannot rave about it enough. The second one is recommend a short book, and for this one I'm gonna recommend the whole series because they're all short, and I feel like you can read the series in one day 100%. So the Heartstopper series, this is a graphic novel series. Like, these is a graphic novel series. They have a show on Netflix that's amazing. I actually think I like the show more than the books, and it is basically a graphic novel like this, like comic. Every single one of them is amazing. Every single one of them is unique. I feel like this whole series is just amazing. And then we also have this one, which is Nick and Charlie. This is like kind of like a novella, and I think this goes between volume 1 and 2 of this one. I don't know, but this story goes in between one of these graphic novels. And we also have the yearbook one. So if you're into like reading shorter books to complete like a challenge or something like that, definitely give these a chance. Then another one that I have is Convenience Store Woman. This is really short. I think it's like 163 pages, and it is basically like if you like books about characters more than like plot, then you're gonna enjoy this. This is basically the story about a woman that works in a convenience store, and like basically like everyone, including her family and society, is kind of like telling her like, hello, you're like 30 years old. Not 30, she's like in her 30s but not exactly 30, but they're like, hey, you're in your 30s, like what are you doing with your life? You're still working in this convenience store. It's so hard for me to say that. You're still working in this convenience store, and you don't even have like a boyfriend or anything, so like what are you doing? Are you gonna have kids? Long story short, someone who is very happy in their current life, and society is telling them that that should not be how she should be living life. She should want more than that, and she's completely okay with it. So we see her go through this journey of like basically like trying to do things so that people leave her alone and let her live, and like it's just really thought-provoking, if I had to put a word on it. Like, it's not very like adventurous, there's not that much plot, but like it definitely is thought-provoking. So yeah, I loved this book. Next is recommend a book to screen adaptation, and for this one I have 3 and they're all great. So like the screen adaptation, Daisy Jones and the Six. Obviously we have not seen the end of the adaptation yet. I mean, it depends on when I upload this video, but by the time I'm recording this video, there's only been 2 Fridays out. So like tomorrow there's gonna be new episodes, so I think we have like another week left. Anyways, so far it's been very promising. It's been amazing, everything I wanted and more. I've listened to the soundtrack so many times, like I already know them by heart. Like The fact that I'm never gonna see them in concert hurts my soul because I'm a concert girl, you know what I mean? So yeah, anyways, this one, the book is amazing, the movie is amazing. Also, Heartstopper, I just mentioned that the show, like I said, is better than the graphic novel, of course, because it's just a graphic novel. So yeah, if you guys are gonna do one, actually, you can do any of them. You can do either Heartstopper or Daisy Jones and the Six, but whichever, highly recommend. And then third, I have The Hating Game. This one I think is a really good book, and the movie was good. It wasn't exactly like, I feel like if you're like a really good fan, like a really big fan of this book, you're not gonna love the movie, but it was done good enough to me for me to be like, okay, it was everything I envisioned, just a few details left, but that's okay. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't that bad. So yeah, this one, I love the book and the movie both. So yeah, those are my recommendations for books to screen. Right, then we have recommend a book out of your comfort zone. And for this, I have Babel. So this was my first dark academia book. I have shared my thoughts about it, but I still recommend it. I do feel like I should mention, obviously, before I recommend it, because I think I rated it 3 stars, but I have a few things to say. This is definitely more out of my comfort zone than I thought it was gonna be. So it was already out of my comfort zone because I've never read like any dark academia story or anything like that. I was expecting so much adventure and like a lot of like plot twists and stuff, like where I was gonna have to like, you know, take a step back and be like, okay, let me gather my thoughts. You know what I mean? Like, I thought I was really gonna be like, I thought it was gonna be very complicated to read, but it ended up being super simple to read, and then it ended up having no plot. So I do recommend this. I feel like what you learn from the book is important and everyone should read it, but if you're expecting a very like adventurous story, it's not gonna be it, you know what I mean? So but if you want to know more about like the English language and how colonialism impacted it over the years and throughout history, I feel like this is definitely a great read and definitely out of my comfort zone. Like, I will never read a book like this again. Like, if I see that it's like this, I'll probably not read it, but I'm glad I did. Then we have recommend a book series. So for this one, you already know what I'm gonna say. It's the Daughter of the Moon Goddess duology. I think it's called the Celestial Kingdom duology. You guys, these books, a lot of people say that they're too tropey and too fast-paced. Like, if you want a lot of details whenever like she's fighting with like monsters and stuff like that, you're not gonna get that. Super fast-paced. They tell you that she beat at monsters, but you don't see that many. You only see maybe like one fight per book, you know what I mean? So keep that in the back of your head. There's a love triangle too. If you guys are not into love triangles, probably not for you. I just loved it. I don't know how to explain it. There's just something about it that like the whole world to me was beautiful. I'm also, like, as you guys can see, very into the moon. I'm obsessed with moons. Okay, I'm obsessed with moons. So when I saw this, I was like, I need to read it. This is one of those stories that I read because of the cover. So whenever like the cover, the story, like everything, and then I also am into like Asian culture, like I love it. So it's, I think, based on Chinese mythology. So obviously that's another thing that maybe is the reason why I love it so much. So yeah, anyways, I love this book a lot. It follows Xinjing, which is the daughter of the moon goddess, of course, and the moon goddess is exiled into the moon because she did something, and then Xinjing has to run back to the celestial kingdom to do something, and then there she becomes a warrior and she has like her own life, and then she comes to rescue her mom. And then in this book we basically like see, I feel like, actually, even though it's my current favorite book or duology of all time, I do feel like she could have made this like a little bit shorter and into one book. So like longer than this one, like a little bit longer in pages, but she could have definitely made this into one story. So that's the only complaint I have. But like, these books are amazing. I just love them so much. It's just beautiful. The characters are amazing. There's dragons, there's betrayal, there's like, I love it. I loved it so much. I feel like this is definitely a very underhyped series. All right, recommend a standalone. And for this one, it was a little bit hard because I wanted to recommend a book like Babel, you know what I mean, where like the whole story is like a really long story, but it's all in one. Like, if I recommend like any of these like romance, it's like, obviously it's a standalone, it's like one story, you know what I mean? But like, I feel like fantasy is more like, it's more likely to be more than one book, so that's why I wanted to go for fantasy. But I feel like most of my fantasy series are more than one book, they're not standalone. So I decided to go for tomorrow. So in this one, we follow Sam and Sadie. They met when they were little in a hospital, like in a children's hospital, because Sam has a disability and he like has to walk with a cane for the rest of his life, whatever. He had like an accident. And then Sadie spends a lot of time in the hospital because her sister is in the hospital. So they basically like end up spending a lot of time together in the video game room, and they both share their love for video games. And then we basically follow them into adulthood, where they become basically video game creators. And yeah, but it's just a really good story about it's kind of like a very complicated relationship. And then we have a third character that comes in that is also a big part of the story, and then something else happens throughout the book that also changes their whole lives and their whole dynamic. And yeah, it's just a very interesting book. It is not like a very happy book, not dark, but I do feel like it has some like, you know, like it's a very, I feel like a lot of people are gonna love this because it's very different from anything I've read before. It's not fantasy, it's not, I mean, it's kind of like, it's obviously like fiction, like regular fiction, but I feel like if you were like into video games, like I've never felt like I wanted to, you know how like when you read Daisy Jones and the Six, you have that feeling like, oh, I wish they were like a real band and I could, you know, see them in person and listen to their music, and now they have a show, so now you can finally listen to their music. That's how I feel about this, but with video games. Like the game that they created here, I wanted to play it. I wanted to play it so bad. So yeah, I highly recommend this, especially if you are into like complicated friendships, relationships, and you're also like a gamer and you have like that. Even like if you don't game right now, if you grew up like playing PlayStation and like with that like childhood gaming nostalgia, because I think this is like a very, I think it's an RPG game if I'm not mistaken, I forgot, but like basically like one of those, it gives very like Zelda like open world. It's just a very like, I feel like a lot of people can relate to it even if you're not a gamer, you know. Recommend a book that you don't talk about enough. I feel like for this one, these two, Read Between the Lines and No Rings Attached, those are, first of all, they're all LGBTQI plus characters. They're just amazing. They're amazing. I feel like if you are looking for something not different, but like if you're tired of like, you know, men and women relationships and you want something different, I feel like this is really good. And I feel like whenever I look for queer books to read, they're all like the same recommendations over and over again. And I feel like these two, nobody talks about them. Nobody talks about them, and I love them. I rated Read Between the Lines, I rated it 5 stars, and then No Rings Attached, I rated it 4 stars, because one of the main characters was like, you know, when they're like stubborn, but they're like stubborn like it bothers you. I feel like it bothered me how stubborn she was. I was like, okay girl, like you know. So these are great. I don't want to spoil them, so I would say like Read Between the Lines is about a woman who has a bookstore, and she's renting from like this big building, and the owner of the building is trying to buy her bookstore because they're trying to demolish the building or like build it into something else, whatever. The point is that she has grown attached to this bookstore because her mom, I think, is the one who created it or like opened it, and she's basically telling her that she's gonna have to sell it. Like she has to sell it, she has no options, so she's, you know, dealing with that. But then she meets a woman that complicates things. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna say, because I feel like, yeah, I don't want to spoil it. And then the second book is about one of the, like, her best friend, and she is dating her other friend. So like, let's say I am the main character of this first book. I have a friend, but then I also have a childhood friend, and then my new best friend and my childhood friend are like fake dating basically. So yeah, that's what the second book is about. Loved both of them. Another book that I don't talk about enough is A Stationery Shop. This is more of those like romance that I was talking about in my other video, where I feel like my taste has changed and now I like a different type of romance. This is what I'm talking about. Like in this romance, we see more than just the romance. This is basically like their journey throughout, I think it's Iran or Pakistan. So in this story, I think she's getting like married to someone else, like an arranged marriage, but she is in love with this guy who also frequents I think it's actually a bookstore to a stationery shop. Why am I the way I am? Anyway, she spends a lot of time in a stationery shop, and so does another guy, and she ends up getting close to him. They have like the owner of the stationery shop that kind of like not hooks them up, but like he kind of sets them up in a way, you know what I mean? And they meet very young. She is, I think, don't quote me on that, but I think she is getting married, like in an arranged marriage, and she's in love with this guy. So one day they plan to meet at the town square so that they can be together, and there's like a coup, something like a riot going on because of a coup that's gonna change like the whole country forever. And basically, like, with all the mess of like the riot and everything, they don't ever like meet up or anything, and they just move on with their lives. I don't know how to say it without spoiling it, but like it feels a little bit like in The Notebook, where like you see their relationship from like when they were young and like crazy in love and willing to do anything for love, and then making decisions throughout their lives to where like it got them to where they're at now that they're older. It's like basically their whole life story. It's heartbreaking. I sobbed reading this, and it's definitely not raved about enough. I actually think it's on Kindle Unlimited as well. I didn't know that until yesterday. So all right, then we have recommend your staple book, and this one I'm gonna make it quick. This is called Word Slut, even though like the lights are washing it out. It's called Word Slut, and it is by Amanda Montel. This is a non-fiction, and I feel like everyone should read it. I have talked about it before. It is about basically like how women has influenced the English language throughout the years, how some words used to mean something, now they mean something else, how words are used, or like language is used to like turn things around and like make things seem what they're not. And like it's just, I feel like everyone should read this book. I have said it again, and I go more in depth in my video, so I will link it up in the cards so you guys can check it out in my wrap-up video. But I love this book. I love this book, and like I have said every single time I talk about it, everyone should read it. Everyone should read it. Recommend the books that got you into reading. So we have The Hating Game, which I already mentioned. This one was the one that got me into reading, but I feel like before this one, I think I read the Selection series. So I read the Selection series. I got super into reading, and then I ended up looking for like on Amazon on like the list of like bestsellers, and this is the one that was number one at that point. I was in like fall 2018, I think, because I was on maternity leave for my daughter. So I do remember when I read this, what I felt. I just wanted to keep reading. I wanted like, give me more, you know what I mean? And like, even though I did get into reading again because of the Selection, this is the one that I was like, oh, I am passionate about reading. Like when I read the Selection, it was like, oh, okay, this is fun, I can make this again into like a hobby. But this is when I was like, no, this is not going to be a hobby. This is going to be like my whole life. I'm going to be a reader for the rest of my life, because if books can make me feel the way this made me feel, I'm hooked. I'm addicted, okay? I'm addicted. And then last but not least, it says recommend 3+ bloggers who recommend great books. And for this one, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, because I quit social media, I don't keep up with influencers as much as I used to. I don't know who is trendy, who's not. But I am gonna mention like the people that I go for recommendations. So first, thrillers. If I want any recommendation of thrillers, the one YouTuber that I feel like we have the same taste in thrillers is Jamie's Library. She has really good taste in thrillers, and I feel like every single time I read any of the recommendations she gives me, I'm obsessed. So if I'm going for thrillers, that will be the one I will go for. If we're reading romance, I feel like Carla Zapata, she is not like just about books. Like she does more like vlogs, day in the life type of things, but she does talk about books, and I do keep up with her on Goodreads. I feel like whenever I read a book that she recommends, especially romance, like I said, like if I'm gonna go for romance, I feel like she, like me and her have like the same taste. So if she loved the book, I know I'm gonna love it. For fantasy books, I always go for the book Leo, and I don't go for her recommendations. Like I don't go to her channel and I'm like, okay, she recommended this, I have to read it, you know what I mean? But if I do feel already like attracted towards a fantasy book, like that sounds interesting, I might want to read that, I do go to her to see her review, because I feel like when she's a good reviewer, and whenever she review books, I can tell if I'm gonna like it or not. Like for Stolen Air, I didn't love it, but I do feel like I liked it more than I should have, because I watched the book Leo, and she said to go into it not expecting it to be like the Folklore series, like to think that it's a different book, and that was key for me to rate it 3 stars, because if not, it would have been a 2 stars. I said what I said. But yeah, for fantasy, she's the one. Or Mel Reads, she has a great taste in fantasy books, so I feel like I will go to either of those two if I do want like any fantasy recommendations or anything like that. If you guys do have smaller YouTubers for me to follow with the same taste as me, leave them down below because I would love to check them out. So yeah, that is it for all the book recommendations. If you guys have different recommendations or different thoughts or opinions on anything I said today, leave it down in the comments. I would love to hear your opinions. And if you liked it, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next one.